choosing friends. One day, 3 disciples of Socrates came to him with a question: how can we find the ideal friend? Instead of answering directly, Socrates sent them to a wheat field and instructed them to pick the largest ear of wheat they could find. The first disciple quickly spotted a large and beautiful ear of wheat and picked it right away. However, as he continued, he noticed even larger ones and regretted his hasty decision, feeling disappointed for the rest of the journey. The second disciple learned from the first and hesitated every time he saw a large ear, thinking there might be better ones ahead. But by the time he reached the end of the field, he realized he had missed all his chances. The third disciple took notes from the previous 2. He spent the first third of the field observing and categorizing the wheat ears. In the next third, he verified his observations, and in the final third he chose a large and beautiful ear from among the largest ones. Although it might not have been the absolute largest or most beautiful, he was content with his choice for the entire journey. 2. The bird cage. John and George made a bet. John claimed that if he gifted George a bird cage and hung it prominently in George's room, George would end up buying a bird to put in it. George was skeptical, arguing that keeping a bird was too much of a hassle and he would never buy one. John went out and bought a beautiful bird cage for George, hanging it in the most noticeable spot in George's living room. As a result, whenever people entered George's living room, they would ask, "George, when did your bird die?" "I've never had a bird," George would reply. "Then why do you have that bird cage hanging there?" Friends and visitors were puzzled by George's setup, and many began to perceive him as lacking compassion or interest in animals. Eventually, George felt compelled to buy a bird and place it in the cage, finding it simpler than having to explain the empty cage to everyone. It's a common human trait to set up cages in our minds, only to later ponder what should occupy them. 3. The gluttonous giant fish. In the vast ocean, there was a giant fish that claimed dominion over all. Even the fiercest of snapping turtles had to obey its commands. One day, it ordered the snapping turtles to hunt for fish. The turtles picked out the plumpest fish and brought them back in a small boat filled to the brim. Yet after feasting nonstop, the giant fish was still not satisfied. It then caused a great wave, pushing the school of fish towards the shore, and commanded the snapping turtles, "Hurry! Catch them for me! Catch! Catch!" Seeing the snapping turtles moving too slowly, the giant fish decided to take matters into its own jaws. It opened its mouth wide, lunging forward to swallow the school of fish whole. However, due to the overpowering wave, it was thrown against a rocky shore, unable to return to the deep. Half of its body stuck on the rocks and the other half in the sea. The school of fish it had chased turned around and began to nibble on it gradually. 4. The road ahead. The night was pitch black. On the street, people hurried by. There was a steady tapping sound coming from a wooden cane in the hand of a blind man. Passers-by warned, "You're headed towards a dead end." The blind man replied, "You have to go all the way to find out what the road is like." Undeterred, the blind man kept moving forward. The tapping sound grew fainter, quieter, until it finally faded away completely. 5. Secrets to a long life. At the foot of Mount Tai, there lies a rock known as the 3 Laughs Stone. Legend has it that 3 centenarians used to exercise there regularly, engage in deep conversations about the past and present, and always seemed to be in high spirits. One day, they shared their secrets to longevity. The first elder said, "Drink a glass of wine before meals." The second elder said, "Take a walk after meals." The third elder humorously added, "An annoying wife." Their laughter led to the naming of the 3 Laugh Stone. Their secrets to a long life might seem simplistic and somewhat perplexing. However, there's wisdom in their words. Drinking a moderate amount of wine before meals can potentially extend one's life. Taking a walk after eating can do the same. And the comment about an annoying wife was a humorous way to suggest that sexual desires tend to decrease with age, advising against overindulgence. Their wise words encourage us to maintain balance in all life's activities, emphasizing moderation in everything. 6. True nature. A wealthy man's daughter fell deeply in love with a poor young man. Her father asked her to bring her suitor home to meet the family. The girl shared the exciting news with the young man, who became despondent because his family was so impoverished that he didn't even own decent clothing. Ultimately, the rich man's daughter had to prepare everything for him. On the appointed day, the young man arrived at his beloved's home joyfully. The wealthy father was initially impressed by the young man's dignified and handsome appearance. However, he frowned upon noticing that despite the expensive clothing, the young man lacked a pleasant scent. The father surmised the young man couldn't afford such attire and felt disappointed. While the women were washing their hands, the wealthy father discreetly asked the young man, "Those clothes aren't yours, are they?" The young man's face flushed with embarrassment, but he nodded in agreement. The father said, "We are aware of your financial situation. I understand you did this to make us happy and to save face, but sadly you've not only altered your appearance, but also denied your true self. We don't fear poverty. We fear wealth without honesty. If a person denies their true nature, how can they find their place in society? And how could I entrust my daughter to you?" The father's blunt words, though harsh, were a wake-up call for the young man, leaving him deeply ashamed. This meeting became a valuable lesson for him. From then on, he abandoned vanity and lived true to his nature. After the wealthy couple passed away, the young man and his wife inherited the entire estate. However, they donated it to the community, building schools and engaging in public service. Eventually, the couple became even wealthier than the wife's parents, but remained humble and modest, always remembering that true happiness comes from being authentic and grateful for what one has. 7. The secret. There was an old man who sold fish, and his business was thriving. Many people preferred buying fish from him, claiming his fish were of the highest quality and tasted the best. Other fishmongers were baffled by his success because they fished in the same area and even used water from the same source to keep their fish. Despite the similarities, customers still insisted that the old man's fish were superior in quality and taste. One day, when the successful fishmonger went on a trip, the others decided to investigate his fish tank to uncover his secret. To their surprise, the tank looked just like theirs, but with one notable difference. It contained a large, aggressive fish that was constantly moving. After some thought, they realized the secret. The presence of the large fish kept the others from resting, forcing them to swim continuously, which naturally improved the quality of their flesh. 8. Sincere advice. During a lecture by a management professor, he proposed, "Let's start with a small experiment." He began placing large rocks into a big jar until no more could fit and asked the students, "Is the jar full now?" The students unanimously agreed, "Yes, it's full." The professor then poured gravel into the jar, shaking it so the gravel filled the spaces between the rocks, and asked again, "Is it full now?" This time, the students were cautious, with one suggesting, "Perhaps not yet." Next, the professor added sand to the jar, filling the gaps between the gravel and rocks. After asking once more if the jar was full, the students collectively responded, "Not yet." "Good," the professor acknowledged. Then he poured water into the jar until it was full and asked, "What does this example illustrate?" An eager student responded, "It shows that even if your schedule seems full, if you try, you can always fit more in." That's not quite right, the professor clarified. This experiment teaches us that if you don't put the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in at all. What do these big rocks represent in our lives? Quality time with loved ones, beliefs, knowledge, or dreams, or perhaps our career goals. Maybe it's a close friend. Whatever it is, we must prioritize these big rocks first in our lives. 9. The daughter and the daughter-in-law. Two women were chatting in the park when one asked the other, "How's your son doing?" "Don't even ask, it's such a misfortune," the other woman sighed. "He's so pitiable, married to a lazy wife who doesn't cook, clean, do laundry, or take care of the kids. She just eats and sleeps all day, and every morning my son has to prepare breakfast and bring it to her in bed." After a moment of sobbing, she turned and inquired, "And how about your daughter?" "Oh, my daughter is very fortunate." The woman beamed with happiness. "She married a wonderful man who doesn't expect her to do any household chores. He takes care of everything like cooking, cleaning, laundry, and looking after the kids. Moreover, he even serves her breakfast in bed every morning." 10. Habit. There was a young man who was so desperate to become wealthy that he would rush to any place rumored to hold the secret to riches. One day, he heard about an old man with silver hair living deep in the mountains who could grant any wish to those fortunate enough to find him. Believing that meeting this man could fulfill his desires, the young man prepared his belongings overnight and set out at dawn. After 5 grueling days of searching, he finally met the old man. Eagerly, he asked for a magic gem or some treasure that would make him wealthy. The old man told him, "Every morning before sunrise, go to the sandy riverbank in your village and look for the wish stone. This stone is unlike ordinary ones. It glows and feels warm. Finding it will make your wish come true." Grateful for the advice, the young man hurried back home. Every morning he would go to the sandy bank and search among the stones, discarding those that neither glowed nor felt warm by throwing them into the river. This continued for over half a year without success. One morning, as he sifted through the stones as usual, tossing aside those that didn't meet the criteria, he suddenly cried out. In his automatic routine, he had thrown the wish stone into the river, only realizing its warmth after it was already out of his hand. 11. The mystical doorway. In a kingdom far away, there was an esteemed official who was not only exceptionally talented and supremely intelligent, but also an extraordinary diplomat, deeply trusted by the king. After his demise, finding someone to fill his shoes was no small feat. The king scoured the realm and finally shortlisted 3 candidates. The first was a brilliant mathematician who could solve any mathematical problem thrown his way. Mathematics, requiring utmost precision, forms the basis of all other sciences, making it the foundation of knowledge. Next, there was a philosopher who was also a magnificent magician. He could conjure theories, reasonings, and entire worlds out of thin air without the need for any external aid. He was also a writer, crafting universes with his words and imagination. The third was a cleric, a man of unwavering faith in God, dedicating his days to prayer. On the day of the challenge, the king told them, "You have 3 days to prepare. On the 4th day, the contest will begin, and I will choose the victor to be my chief advisor. Prove your wisdom." The mathematician, fearing time was too short, worked day and night, forgoing sleep and food, determined to secure a prosperous future. The philosopher prepared for all possible scenarios, readying himself to tackle any intellectual challenge that might be presented. The cleric, however, lived his days in tranquility, praying and strolling, believing that every moment was a test in itself, thus requiring no special preparation. On the day of the test, the king presented them with a locked door adorned with numerous numbers but no key. The numbers were the key to unlocking the door, and the first to emerge would be declared the winner. The mathematician feverishly began calculating, trying to crack the code, while the philosopher used his unique methods to ponder over the riddle. The cleric, feeling out of his depth in mathematics and science, chose instead to sit in a corner, sing, pray, and eventually, out of simple curiosity, check the door, only to find it unlocked. When the king announced the end of the contest, revealing the cleric as the winner, it dawned on the others that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective, and that overthinking can cloud judgment. The cleric's faith and simplicity had led him to victory, underscoring the king's wisdom in valuing diverse qualities in leadership. 12. The Chick and the Corn Kernels. There was a little chick that often sat in its nest, feeling anxious and uneasy. One day, someone suddenly appeared outside the door, which scared the chick so much that it ran away. When it came back, the person had left, but there were corn kernels in front of the nest. The chick was puzzled and thought to itself, where did these corn kernels come from? On the second day, the same person came again and the chick ran away once more. Upon its return, the person was nowhere to be seen, but the corn kernels were still there in front of the nest. There must be a connection between the person and the corn kernels, but it was still too early to jump to conclusions, so the chick decided to wait and watch the stranger carefully. It waited and observed, and the same situation kept happening every day. Gradually, a cause and effect theory formed in the chick's mind. Every time this person shows up, corn kernels appear. It observed this a total of 999 times. Now, it was convinced that the appearance of the person was linked to the appearance of the corn kernels. The person was the cause, and the corn kernels were the effect. After 999 occurrences, it was enough evidence for the chick to establish this inevitable relationship because it had waited, tested, observed, and researched many times. Therefore, it was confident that this would continue without exception. This was a rule, and the chick was excited for the person to appear again. And when the person appeared for the 1000th time, the chick approached them, grateful for their kindness, only to be killed in the end. Such is life, devoid of cause and effect. Even if something happens 999 times, you cannot assume the 1000th time will not be an exception. 13. The Philosopher and the Ass. One leisurely afternoon, the great Greek philosopher Socrates was enjoying a stroll with a close friend, deeply engaged in an enlightening conversation. Out of nowhere, a young man, evidently furious, stormed up to them and struck Socrates on the leg with a stick before making a quick escape. Socrates' friend, outraged by this unprovoked attack, was ready to chase after the young man to confront him. However, Socrates, ever the embodiment of calm, stopped his friend in his tracks, advising against retaliation. "Are you afraid of him?" his friend asked, puzzled by Socrates' lack of reaction. "Do you really think I'm afraid?" Socrates replied with a gentle chuckle, dismissing the notion. "There's no reason for me to fear him." Still skeptical, his friend pressed on. "Then why not stand up for yourself? Why not hit back?" Socrates, with a wise smile, turned to his friend and said, "My dear friend, you're missing the point. If an ass kicked you, would you feel compelled to kick it back?" This story illustrates Socrates' profound wisdom and his belief in rising above petty provocations, a lesson that resonates through time. 14. The Stone and the Brick. Legend has it that when Laozi was riding his blue ox through the Hanggu Pass, he encountered an old man with silver hair over 100 years old. The old man greeted Laozi and said, "I've heard of your vast knowledge and wisdom, and I'd appreciate some advice." The old man proudly shared, "I'm 106 years old. Frankly, since my youth, I've lived a life of leisure. Those my age have all passed away. They toiled to cultivate hundreds of acres, built vast gardens, but in the end, they left with nothing. They contributed to the Great Wall but didn't enjoy its glory, constructed 4 houses but were buried in a desolate outer burial ground. I, on the other hand, have never farmed but still ate grains, never made bricks yet lived in a sheltered home. Sir, can I now laugh at their busy lives even though it meant dying a bit younger? Laozi, with a gentle smile, requested, "Please fetch a brick and a stone for me." Laozi placed the brick and stone before the old man and asked, "If you had to choose one, which would it be?" The old man confidently chose the brick, explaining, "This stone is shapeless and serves no purpose, while the brick is useful." Laozi then turned to the people around and inquired, "Would you choose the stone or the brick?" Everyone chose the brick over the stone. Laozi then asked the old man, "Which lasts longer, the stone or the brick?" The old man replied, "Obviously the stone." Laozi concluded with a serene smile, "The stone, though more enduring, is not chosen, while the brick, less lasting, is preferred because of its utility. So it is with all things. Life may be short, but if useful, it is chosen and cherished. Longevity without purpose is overlooked and thus short in memory." The old man was left deeply humbled by Laozi's wisdom. 15. The Proud Horsekeeper. When Yanzi served as the prime minister of the state of Qi, he once passed by the home of a horsekeeper. One day the horsekeeper's wife peeked through the crack of the door and saw her husband sitting on the carriage with an air of pride, displaying a commanding presence. Upon returning home, the horsekeeper found his wife furious, demanding to return to her parental home. Confused, he asked, "Why do you want to go back to your parents' house?" His wife responded, "Yanzi serves as the prime minister. His reputation spans the entire nation, yet I've seen him bowing humbly on his horse carriage, demonstrating great modesty. But you, merely a horsekeeper, display such arrogance, failing to recognize your own place. Therefore, I no longer wish to live with you." Following this incident, the horsekeeper changed his attitude, becoming more humble. Yanzi noticed the change and, intrigued, inquired about the reason. After learning the story, Yanzi went on to recommend the horsekeeper for a significant position in the state of Qi. 16. The Friendship of ZHONG and SHUYA. ZHONG was a renowned general during the spring and autumn period, serving under Duke Huan of Qi and playing a crucial role in Qi's rise to prominence. SHUYA, also known as Shu, was celebrated for his intelligence. These two were very close friends. Initially, ZHONG served the son of Duke Xiang, Prince Ju, while SHUYA served Prince Ju's brother, Prince Xiaobai. After Duke Xiang's death, the ministers decided to bring Prince Ju back to ascend the throne. Fearing Prince Xiaobai might return first, ZHONG pursued him and shot an arrow, which Prince Xiaobai pretended to be hit by, deceiving ZHONG. Afterward, Prince Xiaobai and SHUYA hurried back to Qi, where Prince Xiaobai became Duke Huan of Qi. Once Duke Huan was in power, he wanted SHUYA to become his prime minister. However, SHUYA recommended ZHONG, who was then imprisoned. Duke Huan agreed and appointed ZHONG as prime minister. Under ZHONG's governance, Qi became a dominant state. ZHONG later reflected on his relationship with SHUYA. "When I was poor and worked with SHUYA, whenever we split earnings, I always took more. SHUYA never considered me greedy. He understood my poverty. I devised strategies for SHUYA, sometimes causing him trouble. Yet he never saw me as foolish, knowing fortune is unpredictable. I was imprisoned 3 times by the king, But Bao Shuya didn't see me as dishonorable, acknowledging I hadn't found the right opportunity. I lost every battle I fought, but Bao Shuya didn't deem me cowardly, aware I had an elderly mother to care for. Even when Prince Ju failed and I was imprisoned, Bao Shuya didn't think me shameless, knowing I wasn't concerned with petty matters or tarnished reputation. My parents gave me life, but Bao Shuya truly understood me. As Zhong neared death, Du Quan asked if Bao Shuya could replace him. Zhong disagreed, stating Bao Shuya's excessive kindness would prevent him from dealing decisively with traitors, potentially endangering Du Quan and himself. Learning of this, Bao Shuya wasn't upset. Instead, he was happy, recognizing only Zhong truly understood him. 17. Valuing objects over people. Lord T-Se of the state of Qi enjoyed using hawks for hunting rabbits. One day, Chu-Ju accidentally let the hawk escape, and Lord Tse ordered Chu-Ju to be executed. Hearing this, Yanzi went to see Lord Tse. Chu-Ju has committed 3 major offenses, making it easy to justify his execution. May I detail his crimes before his execution is carried out? Lord Tse agreed. Yanzi pointed out Chu-Ju's faults. Firstly, Chu-Ju, you were tasked with caring for the king's hawk but let it escape. This is the first offense. Secondly, your negligence has led to a situation where the king considers taking a human life over a bird's loss, marking the second offense. Lastly, executing you will lead to criticism from the feudal lords worldwide, accusing the king of valuing animals over his subjects, which is the third offense. Upon hearing this, Lord Tse quickly told Yanzi, "Say no more, I understand your point," and then decided not to proceed with the execution but to deal with the matter more leniently. 18. Half a rug. A man, after getting married and having a son, adored his child but detested his own father. The elderly father was unsteady and slow, always seeming to be in the way, contributing nothing beyond eating and smoking. The son wanted to send his father away, and one day he told his wife, "Let's have the old man live outside." His wife pleaded for the father to stay, but to no avail. With no other choice, she suggested, "Then please allow him to take a rug with him." Internally, the son only wanted to give his father half a rug, but outwardly agreed to a full one. At that moment, his son spoke up, "Dad, don't give Grandpa a full rug, just give him half. Keep the other half safe for when I grow up. When you get old, I'll need it to send you outside like Grandpa." The son's words struck fear into the man, prompting him to keep his father at home. He realized that if he acted cruelly, his son might treat him the same way in the future. 19. The tiger dies, but the wolf lurks. There was a young scholar named Na Thak who chose not to pursue a government career and instead moved his family deep into the forest. A tiger often crouched outside their fence, peering into their home. Na Thak warned his family, "We must guard against this tiger, preventing it from breaking into our home." He had a wall built around the house, planting thorny bushes along its exterior. At sunrise, they would beat drums to scare the tiger away. When bandits approached, they lit a large fire as the tiger feared fire and dared not come close. For a year, they lived in safety. With the arrival of a harsh winter one night, the hungry tiger thought of breaking into Na Thak's home to steal pigs. Despite its fear of fire driven by starvation, it took the risk. It leaped over the fire, its claws scraping the wall, but the thorns pierced it, causing it to fall into the fire, burning and howling in pain before fleeing. The forest animals scattered in fear, but the tiger could not penetrate Na Thak's defenses. A few days later, it died of hunger. Na Thak and his family rejoiced at the tiger's death, feeling secure. Things are good now, we have nothing to fear. Gradually, the fence fell into disrepair, unattended. A corner of the wall collapsed due to rain but was left unfixed. The thorny bushes died off, and they stopped lighting fires. Then, one unexpected night, another beast broke into their home, killing everyone in Na Thach's family. From then on, whenever the story was recounted, people would say, Na Thach only prepared for the tiger, but dangers come in many forms. Their downfall was due to their lack of vigilance. 20. Poverty is true wealth. In the collection Aesop's Fables, there's a story that goes like this. A city mouse and a country mouse were great friends. One day, the country mouse wrote a letter to the city mouse saying, "Dear city mouse, if you're ever free, I invite you to visit me at my home in the countryside, where you can enjoy the beautiful scenery and fresh air and experience a leisurely and relaxed lifestyle." What do you think? Upon receiving the letter, the city mouse was delighted and immediately went to the countryside. The country mouse was overjoyed to see its good friend. It prepared a lavish meal, but fearing there wouldn't be enough food for both, the country mouse only ate a bit of grain. Meanwhile, the city mouse had a handful of beans, a piece of cheese, and a ripe red apple. After finishing the meal, the city mouse said, "How can you live in the countryside like this? You see nothing but forests, rivers, fields, and mountains. Life is so boring when all you hear are the sounds of birds. Come to the city with me. You could live in beautiful houses and have delicious food every night. Just 1 week in the city and you'll forget all about this countryside life." So, the two mice went to the city together. The country mouse was amazed by the grandeur and cleanliness of the city and felt envious. Thinking of its life in the countryside, running through fields from morning till night, eating only wheat and grains, searching for food in the cold snow of winter, and sweating all summer long compared to the city mouse, it felt unfortunate. When they arrived at the city mouse's house, it was already dark. "You must be hungry after our long journey," said the city mouse. "We'll have dinner right away." So, they went to a dining place, where the city mouse found lots of fruits and cakes. "Help yourself," it said. "There's enough for both of us to have a feast," rejoiced the city mouse. "You're really wealthy." But then a dog entered. The mice scurried off the table and disappeared into a hole in the floor. The country mouse was terribly frightened. "Don't be afraid," the city mouse reassured it. "That dog can't get in here." Later they went into the kitchen and found a piece of apple pie on the shelf, enjoying it immensely. Suddenly they saw a pair of gleaming eyes watching them. "Cat! Cat!" shouted the city mouse, and they both dashed into the hole in the wall. The country mouse, terrified and forgetting its hunger, later put on its hat and said to the city mouse, "I prefer the countryside life. It's true the city has beautiful homes and delicious food, but it's so stressful every day. I'd rather go back to the countryside and eat barley, living happily. In the countryside, birds sing while I eat apples and corn. In the city, cats watch you eat cakes. I'd rather eat corn in peace than cake in fear." Living in luxury but always in fear is not as good as the simple, carefree days of a humble life. Everyone has their own interpretation of life. What matters is how you view it. Don't envy others. As long as you like it, you can enjoy your own life. 21. Illusory fears. In a certain district, there was a junior official who went to pay his respects to the district magistrate, who in turn offered him a glass of wine. As the junior official was about to drink, he noticed a small pink snake swimming in the glass. However, since it was a gift from a superior, he felt compelled to drink it, closing his eyes as he did so. After returning home, he suffered from severe abdominal pain and was unable to eat. Eventually, He became seriously ill and his condition worsened over time. Despite the efforts of many skilled doctors and various treatments, his illness could not be cured. Later, the district magistrate visited the junior official's home and, upon seeing his severe illness, inquired about what had happened. The junior official replied that he had swallowed a small pink snake that was in the wine the magistrate had given him. The magistrate was initially skeptical, but the junior official insisted on his story. Upon returning to his office, the magistrate pondered the incident and, looking up, noticed a red bow hanging on the north wall. He suddenly realized the cause of the misunderstanding. He then summoned the ill junior official to his office and showed him the wine again, this time revealing a red snake appearing in the glass. The magistrate explained that it was actually the reflection of the red bow on the wall. Realizing he hadn't actually swallowed a snake, the junior official felt relieved and recovered from his illness a few days later. 22. The optimistic blind men. Two blind men were walking down the street with their canes. One of them remarked, "Being blind has its perks. Those with sight are always buried in work, never-ending tasks, especially the farmers who have it even tougher, unlike us who can enjoy a more relaxed pace of life." "You're right. The farmers really have it rough," agreed the other blind man. Just then, a group of farmers passed by and overheard their conversation. Pretending to be a high official, one of the farmers said, "You two, don't you see the high official coming? Why aren't you making way? Do you wish to be punished?" Another farmer swung his stick, hitting each blind man on the head, pushing them to the side of the road. Then he quietly moved behind them to listen in on their conversation. One of the blind men said, "Ultimately, being blind is still the best. If we had been able to see and still didn't make way for the high official, we would have not only been beaten but also thrown in jail." "Yes, indeed, a few hits are nothing. We are still the luckiest," the other blind man concurred. In this manner, the thieves gradually stole half of the herdsman's goats. 23. Full yet not full. There was a young apprentice who, after years of study under his master, felt he had mastered all there was to learn. He confidently stated, "I've learned all of your techniques, and now I'm ready to practice on my own." Observing his apprentice's self-assured demeanor, the master inquired, "What do you mean by having learned all?" "I've absorbed enough. Cramming more won't make a difference." The apprentice replied, "Fill this bowl with stones, will you?" the master instructed. The apprentice complied. "Is it full?" the master asked. "Yes, it's full." The master then took a handful of sand and poured it into the bowl, filling the spaces between the stones without any spilling over. "Is it full now?" he asked again. "Now it's definitely full." The master then poured a glass of water into the bowl and it absorbed without overflowing. "Is it full now?" he questioned once more. The apprentice, humbled, bowed his head. This story deepens our understanding of the saying, "Learning has no bounds." Young people often think that having read many books means they've encompassed all knowledge, much like the bowl filled with stones. 24. The final day. There was someone traveling with a pilgrim, and they both visited a wise sage living in seclusion. Upon meeting the sage, the person asked, "If you had only one day left to live, what would you do?" The sage, slowly stroking his long white beard, replied, "Well, first off, I'd write some poetry, then have a cup of tea, perhaps weed the garden a bit, maybe take a stroll and check on the neighbors, and possibly sneak in a quick nap." "Hold on a second," the pilgrim interjected. "Those are your everyday activities." "Exactly." The sage responded, "Why should the last day be any different from the rest? The final day of our lives holds more significance than any other, for it is the day of departure. and it lurks within the 365 days of the year, silent and unnoticed, with no one knowing where it might fall. 25. The crux of the matter. For 20 years of teaching at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, Dr. Adrian would always begin his lectures by writing two numbers, 2 inches and 4 inches on the board, and then asking his students, "What's the answer?" Some would say 6, others 2, some might guess 8. A few found it boring and remained silent. After a lively debate among the students, Dr. Adrian would finally speak up. "Arguing like this is futile because you're missing the crux of the matter. What is the operation? Are we adding or subtracting, multiplying or dividing, or is it something else entirely? Without understanding the problem, how can you possibly find the right solution?" 26. The President and the Colonel. George Washington, the inaugural President of the United States, is today celebrated as one of the nation's most esteemed leaders. He was known for his strict yet compassionate approach towards his subordinates. On one occasion, an officer ordered a soldier to remove a large tree that had been knocked down by the wind and was blocking the road. The soldier struggled with the task, while the officer merely stood by and watched. At that moment, a stranger approached and asked, "Why don't you lend him a hand?" The officer replied, "Oh, I am a colonel in General George Washington's army." The stranger, without a word, quickly went over to help the soldier with the tree. The colonel, puzzled, asked, "Why would you assist this man?" The stranger responded, "In this world, everyone is free and equal, and no one has the right to command him in such a manner." Curious, the colonel inquired about the stranger's identity, to which the stranger revealed, "George Washington." The colonel was left red-faced with embarrassment. 27. The Fisherman and the Gems. Before dawn broke, an elderly fisherman set out to the river to start his day. Suddenly, something tangled around his leg. It turned out to be a bag of stones. He picked it up, set aside his net, and sat by the riverbank waiting for daylight. To pass the time in his boredom, he took a stone from the bag and tossed it into the river with a splash. He continued, throwing stone after stone. As the sun began to rise, he realized the bag was empty, save for the single gem he held in his hand. In the sunlight, he shouted in dismay upon discovering the stone in his hand was a precious gem. He couldn't believe he had thrown away a whole bag of gems. Regretting his massive loss, he berated himself, weeping as though he had lost his mind. By chance, the old man had found a fortune, but just as carelessly lost it. However, it was still fortunate that daylight came before he threw the last gem away. How many of us have had luck like that old fisherman in our lives? In the darkness, before the dawn of realization, we waste many precious opportunities. Life is a treasure trove of gems, yet often we don't know how to utilize it, squandering it instead. By the time we learn to appreciate its value, time has already slipped away. When the secrets, joy, liberation, compassion, and wisdom are gone, a lifetime has also passed. 28. The Divine Turtle. A divine turtle was captured by a fisherman, prompting it to send a dream to King Yuan of Song. That night, King Yuan dreamt of someone peeking through the window who then said, "I dwell in the Tailo marshes and came on behalf of the water deity Thongyang to visit the abode of the river god. Unfortunately, I was captured by a fisherman named Du Thu." Upon waking, King Yuan found the dream peculiar and consulted a dream interpreter. The interpreter informed him, "This was a divine turtle sending you a message in your dream." King Yuan inquired among his attendants, "Is there a fisherman named Du Thu?" One attendant confirmed, "There is a fisherman by that name." Consequently, King Yuan summoned the fisherman Du Thu to the palace. The following day, Du Thu appeared before the king, who asked, "What have you caught recently?" Du Thu replied, "Not long ago, while casting nets, I caught a large white turtle, its shell about 5 feet wide." King Yuan ordered Du Thu to present the turtle to him. Du Thu complied and brought the divine turtle to the king. King Yuan several times contemplated killing the turtle but also wanted to keep it alive. Torn and unable to decide, he once again called for the dream interpreter. The wise soothsayer advised, "If you use the shell of this turtle for divination, it will bring good fortune." Thus, King Yuan ordered the turtle to be killed and its shell used for divination, which proved to be incredibly accurate for all 72 consultations. The divine turtle, despite its ability to communicate through dreams to King Yuan, couldn't escape the fisherman's net. Its gift of prophecy was accurate every time, yet it couldn't avoid its fate. It seems that intelligence has its limits, and even extraordinary wisdom can sometimes fail to change one's destiny. 29. Two Travelers and the Axe. Two individuals were walking down a road when one of them found an axe. Excitedly, he exclaimed, "Look what I've found!" "You shouldn't say, 'I,'" the other corrected him. "You should say, 'We've found it.'" Soon after, the person who lost the axe approached them, accusing the one holding the axe of theft. "See," he said to his companion, "now we're in trouble." "It's not we," his friend replied. "It's I am in trouble." Someone who doesn't share in good fortune shouldn't expect others to share in misfortune. 30. The Philosophy of Balloons. One day, a group of white children were playing in a park when an elderly balloon seller pushed his cart in. The white children flocked to him like bees to honey, each buying a balloon and joyfully chasing after it as it danced in the wind. In a corner of the park sat a solitary black child, hesitant to join the others due to feelings of inferiority. Only after the white children had dispersed did the child approach the old man's cart, earnestly asking, "Could I please buy a balloon from you?" The old man, with a gentle gaze, replied warmly, "Of course, you can. Which color would you like?" Regaining courage, the child answered, "I'd like a black one, please." The black child happily took the black balloon, released it, and watched as it slowly ascended into the wind, standing out against the backdrop of a blue sky and white clouds, creating an extraordinary scene. As the balloon soared, the old man, watching it ascend, gently patted the black child's head and said, "Remember, whether a balloon can fly is not about its color or shape, but what's inside it, hydrogen gas. A person's success is not about their race or background, but whether they have confidence in themselves." That black child was Keen, who grew up to be a renowned psychologist in the United States. 31. The Scholar and the Robbers. Once a learned scholar named Ngu Kuyet was traveling when he encountered a group of robbers. "Stop! Do you want to give us your money or your life?" the robbers demanded, brandishing their weapons to block his path. Ngu Kuyet, with a smile, stepped down from his carriage, handed over all his money and the carriage itself to the robbers, and cheerfully continued on his journey as if nothing had happened. This behavior puzzled the robbers, as most victims would either resist or beg for mercy. Never before had they met someone like Ngu Kuyet, who simply gave away his belongings without a hint of regret. Intrigued, they followed him to ask, "We took all your possessions. Why don't you seem to care?" With a calm demeanor, Ngu Kuyet replied, "A gentleman should not harm himself over material possessions." After he left, one robber remarked, "He truly is a wise man." Another added, "This man is deeply learned. If he were to meet the king of Zhao, he would surely be taken into high regard. If he mentions our encounter to the king, we will be hunted down and killed." We should eliminate him now to prevent future trouble. Agreeing on this, they pursued Ngu Kyuye and killed him. Hearing of this incident, a man from the state of Yan warned his family, "Do not follow Ngu Kyuye's example when facing robbers." Not long after, his brother, remembering this advice, found himself confronted by robbers at the Hamcock Pass. Remembering his brother's warning, he fought back to retain his possessions. However, the robbers were numerous and he eventually had to follow them, attempting to negotiate the return of his belongings. The robbers, annoyed by his persistence and fearing their exposure, decided to kill him to avoid further trouble, along with anyone accompanying him. 32. The path of others. A person wanted to cross a swampy area but found no clear path, so they had to carefully tread step by step. It was a challenging journey, with leaps from left to right, and not long into their walk, they sank into the mud, submerged. Another individual, aiming to cross the same swamp, saw the footprints of the one before and thought, "Someone has already crossed here. If I follow their steps, I'll be safe." After a few tentative steps, which seemed to confirm their guess, they proceeded confidently, only to eventually fall into the mud as well. Then, a third person, seeing the tracks of the two predecessors, didn't hesitate and followed them, meeting a similar fate of sinking into the swamp. Finally, another person came along, noticed the footsteps of many before them and concluded, "This must be the way through the swamp. Seeing how many have passed this way, I just need to follow in their steps to get across." With that, they started walking but ultimately ended up stuck in the mud too. The lesson here is that a path tread by others on earth is not necessarily smooth and easy. Following in someone else's footsteps doesn't guarantee progress and sometimes may even lead into traps. 33. The magical saltfish. Once, a hunter caught a deer and tied it to a tree, continuing his hunt. Right at that moment, a merchant passed by, desiring the deer but hesitant to take what wasn't his. So, he hung a salted fish on the tree as a trade for the deer. Upon returning, the hunter was astonished to find his deer transformed into a salted fish. Believing it to be a magical occurrence in the desolate area, he deemed the saltfish to be enchanted. Word spread quickly, drawing crowds to admire the magical saltfish and offer prayers for various wishes: health recovery, career success, food for the poor, and wealth increase. Many believed their prayers were answered due to their sincere intentions, proclaiming the fish's miraculous powers. A grand shrine was built in its honor, where dozens of priests chanted and performed rituals daily, attracting visitors from afar. Years later, the merchant revisited and was amused to learn the fish's divine status. He revealed the truth behind the fish's origin, debunking its magical tale. After removing the fish, the shrine eventually lost its visitors and fell into ruin. 34. Gratitude. 5 simple-minded men were seen carrying a large boat on their heads as they entered a town. The sight was so astonishing to the townspeople that they couldn't help but stare in disbelief. The boat was so large it seemed it could crush them. Why would they carry it like this? Curious, one bystander approached and asked, "What are you guys doing?" One of the men replied, "We can't bear to part with this boat. It's because of this boat we were able to get here. How could we just abandon it? Without it, we wouldn't have made it to this place. We might have perished on the other shore. We'll never leave this boat. Carrying it on our heads is our way of showing our deepest appreciation for what it's done for us." 35. A father's test of faith. In a vivid dream, a man receives a divine command to sacrifice his only son. Awakening with a heavy heart, he prepares for their journey into the forest, a place unknown to his son, who is brimming with excitement at the adventure ahead. In the dead of night, the child, curious and innocent, questions their purpose in the woods. The father, torn by his secret burden, struggles to respond. Eventually, he draws a parallel between their relationship and that of mankind's with the Almighty, hinting at the profound nature of his task without revealing its grim reality. Deep in the forest, as the father sharpens his knife, a tool meant for a sacrifice his son blissfully aids in, unaware of its true purpose, the bond of trust and faith between them is put to the ultimate test. The son, noticing his father's peculiar actions, inquires with innocence. Faced with the direct question, the father hints at the impending sacrifice, to which the son responds with unwavering faith, mirroring the father's devotion to the divine will, showcasing the complexities of faith, obedience, and love within their familial bond. 36. Fortune and misfortune. An explorer, accompanied by a local porter, ventured into an uncharted wilderness. While cutting down a coconut tree, the explorer accidentally severed one of his fingers due to carelessness. The porter, standing nearby, exclaimed, "Fantastic divine blessings are surely upon you now." This comment infuriated the explorer, who impulsively pushed the porter into a deep pit and proceeded alone. On the following day, the explorer was captured by natives. As they were about to execute him as a sacrifice, someone noticed his missing finger and deemed him an imperfect offering, which they believed would bring bad luck. Consequently, they released him. The explorer hurried back to the pit to rescue the porter and apologize to him. "There's no need for apologies. Your actions were also a divine blessing," the porter responded. "How can you say that?" asked the bewildered explorer. "Because if I had been with you, I might have been the one sacrificed," the porter explained. 37. The Thief and the Awakening. One day, a famous master's temple was broken into by a thief. Encountering the master, the thief inquired, "Can I still achieve enlightenment? However, I must be upfront with you about something. I am a thief, and I cannot quit, so please don't ask me to stop stealing, as that's impossible. I've tried giving up this disgraceful profession many times, but all efforts were futile, and I don't want to waste my time on something I can't accomplish. Stealing is my life, my very existence. I must accept my fate as a thief. Apart from this, I will follow whatever you say." "Why are you worried about being a thief? Has anyone discussed this issue with you?" the master inquired. The thief replied, "Every time I visit a temple and meet monks, they all tell me I need to quit this job." The master laughed and said, "Maybe you came there to steal. Otherwise, why would they care about you being a thief while I don't?" Hearing this, the thief joyfully said, "Wonderful master, you are truly wise. Now I can become your disciple." Thus, the master accepted him. "Now, go and do whatever you like. But there's one condition. You must awaken. You may enter any house, steal anything you want. Those things are yours. Do whatever you wish, I don't mind, but you must fully awaken." Unaware that he was being tricked, the thief continued, "If that's the case, I'll give it a try." 3 weeks later, the thief returned to the master saying, "If I awaken, I won't be able to steal anymore. And if I steal, the awakening will vanish, and I'll be in dire straits." The master remained calm. "I don't care about those things. Don't mention your thievery or stealing anymore. Now, make a decision. If you wish to awaken, you must be determined. If not, make your final choice." The thief was in agony. "But now it's hard to decide. I've seen it and it's beautiful. No matter what you say, I can't abandon it." After pondering for a while, he added, "One evening, on my first break-in at the royal palace, I unlocked all the treasure chests. Stealing them could make me the richest man, but I always tried to maintain awareness. When I was aware, motives vanished, desires disappeared, and gold and jewels were no different from ordinary rocks and sand. But when I lost awareness, the treasures reappeared. This happened countless times, and I even stopped caring about them because all my actions were foolish. They were just rocks after all. Why should I lose myself over them? Ultimately, I decided they were worthless. 38. The stream. Once, a teacher and his student were passing through a forest at midday under the scorching sun. Feeling thirsty, the teacher asked, "Go back to the stream we just crossed and bring back some water." The student returned to the stream, but found it had become muddy from recent passage of some carts, making the water undrinkable. He returned and informed his teacher, "The water in the stream has become murky and can't be used for drinking. Let's continue on. There's a river not far ahead where we can get water." The teacher insisted, "We must go back to that same stream." The student was internally frustrated knowing the water was unsuitable for drinking, and he too was thirsty. Nonetheless, he obeyed his teacher and went back, then asked, "Why are you so adamant about drinking water from that stream?" The teacher simply replied, "Go back one more time." Upon the student's third visit to the stream, the mud had settled, and the water was clear again, with no sediment in sight. Delighted to see the water clean, the student eagerly filled his container and returned. He knelt before his teacher, saying, "You've taught me a priceless lesson. Nothing is permanent. With patience, all difficulties can be overcome. Just like the stream, the mud eventually settles and the water becomes clear again." The student then asked, "Should I have done something the first 2 times you asked me to fetch the water to make it clear?" The teacher answered, "There was no need to do anything, just wait. If you had disturbed it, the water would have become muddy again. Water naturally flows and clears on its own. You just have to let it be." 39. The greedy centipede. When God created the centipede, He did not give it legs, yet it could still move as swiftly as a snake. One day, the centipede felt discontented as it watched antelopes, deer, and other 4-legged animals running faster than itself. The more legs, the faster the run, obviously. So it pleaded with God, "Dear Lord, I wish to have more legs than any other creature." God granted its request, presenting a multitude of legs for the centipede to choose from. However, the centipede greedily attached all the legs to its body, from head to tail, until there was no room left, only then regretfully stopping. Pleased with itself, the centipede thought, "Now, I'll speed like an arrow." But when it tried to run, it found it couldn't coordinate the multitude of legs, each one going in a different direction. It had to stop and realign its legs before taking another step, making it much slower than before. 40. The origin of strength. In a certain town there was a young boy of meager means. Every day he roamed the streets and alleys of the town begging for food, yet he possessed an extraordinary strength. Whenever the king's elephant passed through the village, the boy could grab its tail and halt the mighty beast. He even climbed onto the elephant's back, performing various antics, drawing crowds from all over town who laughed and cheered. This spectacle greatly embarrassed and angered the king. The king summoned his advisors and demanded, "We must find a way to deal with this boy. This is a disgrace. I dread passing through that town, but we can't just move him to another town. Wherever he is, he can grab my elephant's tail, stopping it in its tracks. The boy is incredibly strong. I want to take his strength away." An advisor suggested, "He's just a beggar. If he had a shop to run, it would consume his energy. If he were a primary school student, his energy would also be diminished. But he has nothing to do all day except play, and everyone adores him and feeds him. So he just eats, sleeps, wakes up, and plays again. He's always happy and worry-free, making it difficult to strip him of his strength." One day, a sage advised the king, "Give the boy a job. Tell him if he agrees to do a simple task, he will receive a gold rupee every day. The task is to light the lamps at the village temple every evening at dusk, but he must be paid a gold rupee daily. An advisor questioned, "But what good will that do? It'll only make him stronger. If he gets a rupee, he'll eat more and won't even need to beg." The sage assured, "Just do as I say." So, the beggar boy went to light the temple lamps daily. By the second week, when the king passed through the town again, the boy tried to grab the elephant's tail but failed and was dragged along. The job had subtly sapped his strength, demonstrating that even the smallest responsibilities can alter one's capabilities.